You bleed green. Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go!
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go! Let's go! Go! And a good football Friday morning, Birds fans. Appreciate you streaming in bright and early with the Mac and Mac guys, John McMullen and Jody McDonald. Yeah, we're getting ready for another Eagles showdown. Not till Monday. We'll be here on again Monday right before the game, but plenty to talk about because, Birds actually got back to work, out of practice. Johnny Mac's got info for us. J-Mac, after you made it over to South Philly yesterday, a little conversation with a couple of key Eagles, little practice. For me, most important, and we'll get into A.J. Brown and his whole spin on why he didn't talk to you guys for upwards of a week. But first things first, healthy Eagles, guys back out on the practice squad. We know Avonte Maddox is done for the season, but other than that, Eagles look like they'll be up to speed come Monday in Tampa.
Yeah, it looks that way. Big injury report, so I think people got a little bit scared. But Reed Blankenship talked to him. Kenny Gainwell talked to him. They're going to be ready to go. Fletcher's obviously going to play. Jordan Davis is good. All these guys were on. Devontae spoke yesterday. He's fine. So the vast majority saw Josh Sweat as well with the toe injury. The vast majority of these guys are going to play. Boston Scott still in the concussion protocol. Quez Watkins did not practice with his hamstring, so they might be the most questionable. You get the extra day though, and Boston was out there watching, so there's steps to that thing. Even if you feel right, you can't necessarily practice. So I think the extra day is going to help him. The one guy I would be concerned about is Quez because, hamstring, fast guy, those things tend to linger, and you want to be cautious with them. Terrell Edmonds, I should mention, he was sick, so I expect him to be fine as well. So long list, but only real concern probably is Quez, and that's pretty good. I mean, and we're not talking about injured reserve. Obviously, Avonte's on IR, so he's not on the injury list. That's probably the biggest injury you have to worry about because of what they're going to do to replace him.
Which, by the way, Avonte's IR entire season, right? Not you got to designate short-term or long-term?
No, there's no designations anymore. He can come back after 4 games like anybody else. Once you're on that, the only time that matters is the initial 53. If you're placed on IR before the initial 53, you're done for the season. After that, now there is a limit at some point, and I'll try to look that up in the break. You can only bring a certain amount of guys back from IR, but it's pretty significant. So I wouldn't be concerned about that.
Okay, so you don't have to designate a guy who's done for the season. It's just once you get to a number, if you keep putting guys on IR and bringing them back after 4 games, bringing them back after 4 games, you can't just do that to infinity.
Yes. So, yeah, once you make that initial 53, it's 4 games, and then if you can come back, you can come back.
But it does not look good for Avante Maddox coming back. But you also got a chance to see the Eagles work out yesterday doing practice things. And they did have James Bradbury working in the slot. Not every single play, but he did work with the slot coach yesterday. I read this morning, it was reported. J-Mac wasn't just lip service. They're going to use him there some. The question is how much. You and I have been kind of kicking it back and forth all week, and we both are leaning toward, would you really drop down on the outside corner from Bradbury to Job that much just to protect the slot? It seems like something you'd want to do on a limited basis. The more they talk and the more they practice, John, seems to me like it might be more than a limited basis.
Yeah, well, then Sean was lying, Sean Desai. They've been doing that. I think just more people were paying attention. They've been doing that since the summer. He does some work in the slot. So I don't think it's necessarily changed. Now, I did see Justin Evans. I'm not, looking through the fence before practice, which I'm not supposed to do, Jody. I saw him working in with some slot reps before practice. That to me was more interesting. I don't know. I mean, Sean Desai was pretty definitive. If he's lying, he's lying. I always say you're not under oath on these things, but he was pretty damn definitive. But they've been working with James in the slot for that role. As I said, you probably would have saw it against Minnesota. You didn't get an opportunity to see it because of TJ Hawkinson. You might see it with Travis Kelce. You might see it with Mike Evans if they throw him in there. I don't expect to see it consistently. And I'm trying to look at so here's what he said. He's talking about him working in the slot. So
was this from the other day you're quoting?
I was really impressed with how he's taken on that role and not really sacrificing his corner role, because that's his role. He's our corner, and he's talking about outside corner. But I was learning that. I think it helps him and really everybody in the terms of the way he teaches. We teach it, helps everybody learn all 11 positions. He's pretty definitive what his role is, and he's an all-pro cornerback.
But John, just let me put this in proper perspective. You're quoting him from his media session just the other day?
Yes.
Or was this from previously?
No, this is September 20th.
Gotcha.
This is this week. This is what he said this week. He's an all-pro outside. And by the way, if they do that, win, lose, or draw, because I think we're not going to make our predictions until Monday, obviously, but I think they're going to win the game. I can foreshadow. Win, lose, or draw. If they play him in the slot, I'm going to kill him. The Eagles, that decision-making, that's just dumb. He is an all-pro player. He makes, and by the way, I think Howie might even chime in. I'm not paying a damn slot corner what I'm paying James Bradbury if I'm Howie Roseman. Doesn't make any sense.
But something else the Eagles are on record, and it might not have been this week, but certainly back to before the season started, play our best 11 guys. They were also on record saying that. And for me, the best 11 guys, is that means you're comparing Job to Goodrich. Positions aside, and you can't put them completely aside, but at least in part, if you're playing your best 11 guys, then that would be Job on the field and Goodrich not. So they're well, I don't want to say they're talking out of both sides of their face.
In a vacuum, I don't necessarily disagree with you, because Job is a better outside corner probably right now than Goodrich is an inside corner. But then you start manipulating positions. You're weakening yourself in two positions in my estimation, because Job's not even close to Bradbury on the outside, and Bradbury's not going to be as good as Avante on the inside. So you're weakening two positions when you only need to weaken one. Now, Mario's got to play. He's got to step up. And ultimately, I think he's going to be the guy. And we'll see if I'm right. And I think it's going to be similar to last year when they suffered the multiple injuries at defensive tackle. They're going to give him a very short rope. And if he doesn't do something with it, they're probably going to look outside the organization after this game. And we'll see how that shakes out. But to me, and there's a lot of different, I go back to Jeff Stoutland. You never want to affect two positions if you don't have to. Sometimes you have to. But if you don't have to, why affect two positions? And again, I default to James is a very good player. To expect him to be the same slot, I think that's the thing where people get it mucked up, assuming, well, he's good. He'll be the same outside as he is in the slot. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that even a little bit.
You're right.
I don't even a little bit. I don't agree with that.
But to me, here's the question that you have to answer: is Goodrich hurting you? There's not getting the job done, not shutting the guy down, and then there's you're getting hurt by it. If he's getting hurt and getting burnt, and do me a favor when you get the chance, give me the PFF grades for slot corners last week. Did they actually break it down positionally?
They don't.
Corners?
You gotta
all just corners.
You gotta pick through it. But
right. I will bet that his rating was not all that good. And I know the Eagles, I think it was Sirianni, maybe it was Desai, said thought he got better over the course of the game. Okay, and I didn't think he got that much better. I didn't think he played real well. I thought they missed Avante Maddox pretty badly the other day. That's what you have to determine. Are you actually getting hurt and hurt badly by the guy you're subbing in for Avante Maddox? If that's the case, then you got to get a little bit drastic. And you got to think about moving Bradbury inside. If you don't have to, if Goodrich isn't killing you, then you keep Bradbury right where he is. Well, if Goodrich is killing you, then you got to do something drastic, and you got to say, I think you just said, well, unless you have to, making a change and potentially weakening two positions. Well, define if you have to. For me, if you have to is, Goodrich is getting eaten up in the slot.
Well, I don't think he got eaten up. I mean, he did a good job rallying up, grades, right? And here's the problem with grades. He had a better grade than Job against the Vikings from PFF. Goodrich did. Now, but the problem with that is Job's got to deal with Jefferson on the outside more than Goodrich did. So that factors into it as well. So that's one of the things I always try to bring up with PFF. So people are like, well, you got a better grade. Well, he had an easier job in theory. So that factors into it. But he did not play poorly. Now, people are going to say he gave up, every time they threw at him, he gave up a reception. But a couple of them were to the backs, and he rallied right up and made the tackle. Now, the Minnesota backs are awful. We know that. They just traded for Cam Akers. They're so bad. So, I mean, that factors into it as well. That's not Christian McCaffrey out there. You see Christian last night, that, it's a little bit more difficult dealing with him. So all of that factors into it. There are no, and I asked Sean to decide this as well, but point to me, the 6'2" slot corner in the NFL. I can't find one. There might be one, but I don't know of them. I haven't checked all 32 teams. Maybe there is one. And if someone knows one, give them to me. Those guys don't project well inside. And to the other end of that spectrum, 5'9" guys, as I brought up with Avante, he had one bad season, Jody, when they called him Aaron Glenn, and they said, we're going to play him outside. Aaron Glenn. He was a short guy who was really good outside. I talk about Antoine Winfield. He's a short guy. There's some guys who can do it, but not many. Not many. And Avante certainly couldn't do it. I asked Sean that question because, coaches, let's be honest, they don't like to criticize their own players, nor should they. Doesn't make any sense. It doesn't it doesn't help you in any way. So I asked him, why are there you have a lot of long cornerbacks. I basically asked him. There aren't a lot of those types of players who play slot. Why is that? And he went into this convoluted. He said I was right, but he went into this convoluted. Well, people are starting to put bigger guys in the slot. He was talking about the tight ends, and I get that. The Kelseys, the Hawkinsons, who are glorified flex receivers, Kyle Pitts in Atlanta, guys like that. Yeah, all right. If you want to do that, I'm all for it once in a while. Long term, if you got these little short, shifty Edelman types who run these option routes, you're not going to like that. You're not going to like that with a big, long corner inside.
Right.
So, buyer beware on that kind of stuff.
So it's a matchup thing, and that's what the Eagles were doing when they worked out Bradbury in the slot during the summer for matchup purposes. Well, the matchups might pop up more often if people know that they're weak at the slot corner position because of the injury to Maddox. That's all I'm saying. I don't think it's going to be Bradbury is your new slot corner. Somebody's going to be in that position. Somebody's going to get the majority of the snaps in that position other than James Bradbury. But it might be more than just 2 or 3 snaps a game where he drops in and does play some slot. At least it's looking that way to me, and we'll see how it plays out. Here's the good news. Like you said, Tampa will use Evans out of the slot infrequently. They may do it just as a change of pace. They're not going to be doing it significant time. So I don't think it's going to be a big factor this week, but it could be as the season moves on, unless Howie Roseman decides, we just we have to upgrade here, and maybe he does a trade between now and the trade deadline. All right, so the Eagles are healthy. They got most of their guys who were either out of the game, went down during the game. We'll probably not know about Quez till Monday, right? Yeah, they keep that on the wraps.
Yeah, I don't expect them to practice today. We'll see by Saturday if they can try to ramp them up a little bit. But hamstrings are I think we might get Olamide Zaccheaus on Monday. That's the one guy, just because of hamstring injuries with fast guys, as I said, tend to be things that can linger, especially if you push it and re-injure it. Then it could be a multiple week thing. So I think they're going to be cautious, but that's just speculation. As Nick pointed out, for those watching, you can keep asking. He basically said, I'm not giving you anything on injuries. So, but we keep asking.
That competitive advantage that Sirianni is always striving for. He's McMullen. I'm McDonald. Got back on Birds 365. We got 2 good guests for you today. First up from 33rdteam.com, and I almost got on late on the show today. I was reading Damo's stat pack on JAKIBSports.com this morning. Looked up, oh, shoot, 59. I guess I had better log into the show. We're going to log in with Paul Domwich coming up in just a couple of minutes, and then our bud from Eagles Blitz, IGGLES, EaglesBlitz.com. Tommy Lawler going to join us in hour number 2. So you got the Birds 365 crew together right here on the JAKIB Sports Media on a Football Friday.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, We've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lee Hockey a call.
They're carving them up and good play calling along the way. First and goal at the 6.
On the field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Staffing is not easy, but that's what we do every day, all day. The key to our success is storytelling, asking the right questions to find the right people. Hi, I'm Gary Kane, president of Kane Partners. We want to be your staffing partner.
Since 1977, it's always been about you, the community, at Rafferty Subaru. And through the Subaru Love Promise, we prove we care by supporting charities like So Good Now.
So Good Now helps kids in under-resourced areas by connecting them with student athletes to serve as mentors. We remove barriers so athletes can help youth in the corners of our communities where light and love are needed most.
When you choose Rafferty Subaru, you help organizations like So Good Now.
It's all about you at Rafferty Subaru.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
For the big story on Action News,
search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Got you, Mag guys, here on Birds 365. Waiting for our buddy Paul Domwich to jump in with us. He should join us any minute now. Eagles Bucks on Monday night, and I looked this up today, J-Mac. Eagles and Bucks, since the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as an expansion franchise came into the National Football League, have played the Eagles 21 times, regular and postseason included. What do you think the record is?
Oh boy, I know they had to lose a lot. Tampa Bay was really bad in the John McKay era. I should not, but they've struggled against them over the past few years. They don't play obviously that often, but I'm guessing it's pretty significant. Eagles advantage. I don't know. What'd you say? How many games?
21 times.
I'm going to say Eagles got 13.
The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have won 11 of 21 meetings.
Yeah. They've had their number. Rondé Barber, we all know the playoffs a couple of years ago. So that they obviously didn't play that much early on because the Bucs were bad when they came in. I mean, they were a bad football team for a long time.
21 games, 11 Buck victories, and 5 of the 20. That's a pretty good percentage. 21 games, 5 of them happen to be playoffs. That's a high percentage of just overall.
Yeah, some of those are bad reminders.
Yeah, a little bit. The Bucks have won 3 of the 5 playoff games. 3 times in the wild card game. The Eagles actually took 2 out of 3. Their only loss being with Jalen Hurts at the helm just 2 years ago. They lost in the divisional matchup. Once in the divisional matchup, you got to go back to 1979.
Yeah.
That was before either your or my Eagle covering days.
Doug Williams, baby.
There you go. Bucks beat the Eagles back in the divisional lineup, and you did evoke the name of Rondé Barber, who, yes, if you've been an Eagle fan for 20 years, you will certainly remember the pain that Rondé Barber inflicted. One of the worst Eagle losses, John. You know, you've been covering the team for a long time. I've been covering the team for a long time, and maybe I shouldn't say long time because neither one of us could say, "Oh, I remember the 1979 game, every single detail and the fact." No, I don't. But that championship game loss, I was, I'll use it. I don't know if I used it then, but it's become a common phrase now. I was uber confident in the Eagles going into that game, that they were going to beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. There was that stat out there, which again teach you never
under 32 degrees.
Yeah, under 32 degrees, the Tampa Bay Bucks were 0 for their career, 0 for their franchise history. Had never won. Forget about a playoff game. Forget about a championship game. They had never won a game that kicked off in under 32-degree weather. And they came into the vet and beat the Eagles in the last game in the vet.
Yeah, here's right now. Since you brought it up, I just looked it up. So the Bucks came in 76. They played each other 4 times before 1991. That's it. That's it. That's amazing. Different league, obviously, at the time. But yeah, recently they've had the Eagles number. Let's see, 4 straight they beat the Eagles.
As a 4 straight, I should have noted that. I didn't see.
But they played in 2015, 2018, 2021, and the playoffs that year after in 2022. So they played them twice. And Tom Brady and all.
I remember Brady coming in here and moving it up and down the field.
And both games weren't as close. They only won that game 28-22, but it wasn't that close.
The regular season matchup. Oh, because the Bucks, they ran it down to like the 2-yard line, and then took I think 4 straight victory lap knees, even though they could have punched it in at any time to make it I think I ended up covering that game because of that. It was a while ago, so I'm having trouble remembering it, but I think I felt that I owed the Bucks one because they moved it all the way down the field, ate up the final 4.5 minutes of the game, and then said, we'll stop here at the 2-yard
that might have
line.
been the first Jonathan Gannon game, as I recall, where people were losing their mind because they were dinking it down. It was Brady. Brady's not making mistakes, and he was 34 of 42. So people started losing their minds. You gotta blitz him, blah, blah, blah. And Jalen had a really poor game. And that's why, Nick was getting bombarded with questions about the playoff game because Jalen didn't play well. He was 12 of 26 in that regular season game for 115 yards, passer rating of 55.8. So, Todd Bowles has had his number, so to speak, but they're a completely different team now than they were then. And he didn't play well in the playoffs.
There's still some key members of that defense.
Oh yeah, they got a good defense. I've been talking about their defense. Their defense.
You said they're a completely different team. No, they're not, because the defense is.
They're a completely. When you go from Tom Brady to Baker Mayfield, you're a completely different team. Like, I'm sorry, you're a completely different team. Yes, Todd Bowles is the same. Todd Bowles is a very good defensive coach. I've said from the start, they're not running the football this week. Get that out of your minds. At 115. I got that number as a team. If you pass that, that is a sensational day against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But they're struggling a little bit in the secondary. Carlton Davis is hurt. Dean hasn't played well. Now, the safeties are still good, but the corners have struggled. So this has got to be a passing game. They got to get the passing game going this week.
Well,
next week.
Let's
Monday
get Paul
night.
Domowitch up here and see if the Eagles can get their passing game together. Domo, if you look at the stats, and I was looking at the Paul Domowitch stat pack on JAKIB Media, JAKIB Sports is pointing, and you pointed out that the Eagles have given up a whole bunch of touchdown passes so far this year. Not good. Johnny Mack saying you're moving against the Bucks, not on the ground. You're not. So we're going to see an air raid between Jalen Hurts and Baker Mayfield. Is that what's going to happen on Monday night, Domo?
Well, I think they got to mix it up a little bit more. they can't do. I mean, there isn't going to be a 48 carry game against the Bucs, like John said. This is a defense that can handle the run pretty well. I mean, I think they can have some success against them, but they got to do some other things. They got to get the ball to Dallas Goedert. You know, I mean, they're going to see probably nothing but zone from Todd Bowles, and that's what everybody else has been playing against them, so that they not only can confuse Jalen a little bit on passing, but also everybody's got eyes on Jalen, so he's got nowhere to run. You know, they're playing man, they turn their backs, he's gone. So, you know, that's one of the things we've seen in these first two games is Jalen's had nowhere to run. So they got to do a lot of things better this week.
Yeah. Nick, you know, a lot of people brought up the playoff game, and you know, the Bucs won that game 31-15, and it wasn't that close. They played in the regular season. It seemed closer on paper. It wasn't that close either. But no Tom Brady. I mean, you know, this team is 2-0. I don't think many people expected him to be 2-0. And I do think the defense is still pretty good, Damo, in Tampa. But, you know, I mean, it's Baker Mayfield. It's a weak offensive line other than Tristan Wirfs, and even him, they're moving from right tackle to left tackle, seems to be handling it pretty well. This is a game the Eagles should, you know, put some of those bad memories in the back pocket. But I do think it's going to have to be with the pass. I mean, we know Jason Kelsey's going to the Hall of Fame, but he has trouble moving big guys. And big centers have trouble moving Vita Vea. The linebackers can run sideline to sideline. You got Antoine Winfield supporting. He's like his dad when it comes to tackling and run support. They've been good for 5 years. Like the Eagles have been good against the run for 2 weeks. They've been good against the run for 5 years. I think one is more important. So I think it's an A.J. Brown week. You mentioned Dallas Goedert, Devontae Smith. And the Eagles want to get this going. I think it makes too much sense.
Yeah, I agree. You know, you mentioned Vita Vea. Yeah, Jason Kelsey's probably going to be going into the Hall of Fame at some point here. And he's had his ups and downs with Vita Vea. I mean, Vea's a hell of a player. So, you know, I mean, I think they can have some success, because if they can have some passing success, then it screws Tampa Bay up, you know, a lot, because they can't focus on one part of it.
You got to pass the run, though. You're not going to run the pass. That's how I should phrase it. Yeah.
Well, one thing they haven't had much success. I don't know. You know, teams are just going to keep playing umbrella coverage. They'll probably see it again this week. So, I mean, teams are not going to let them throw deep. Doesn't mean they won't be able to. It's just going to be difficult, which is why, you know, they need to do some stuff underneath. That's why I think Goddard needs to be a factor. You know, they can use him as a drive starter. You know, those simple 6-yard routes to turn a 1st and 10 into a 2nd and 2 rather than a 2nd and 8, which is what they've been looking at a lot. You know, so, you know, but Jalen needs to make better decisions than he's been making. You look at the Minnesota game, you know, it's second highest completion percentage of his career, but he just doesn't seem comfortable in the pocket. You know, he's been sacked 7 times, and a few of them are his. You know, he's just not patient back there, and I'm not sure why. I mean, you know, this line hasn't brought its A game yet as far as pass protection. But still, I mean, Jalen knows he can trust it. He knows this is one of the best offensive lines in the league. So you would think he'd be a little bit more patient. I don't know what's going on there. You know, but they've had 11 days to prepare for this team. You know, Brian Johnson's, you know, he needs to bring his A game as far as play calling this week. You know, they've done a lot of self-scouting, so they know what they've done wrong in the first 2 games. So, I mean, if they don't come out here against Tampa and throw the ball well, I don't know when they will, because, you know, when you've got nearly 2 weeks to prepare and it doesn't happen, then that's when you get concerned more so than after 2 games.
Let me follow up on one guy you specifically mentioned. You said, get it to Dallas Goedert for those 6-yard gains, so you're in 2nd and 4. Last game, they got it to Dallas Goedert 6 times for 22 yards. Again, I'm not great at math, but that's under 3. That's not a 6-yard gain, Damo. That's a 2.8-yard gain. That's not going to get it done. What has it been about Goddard play calling first 2 weeks, Jalen getting the ball fast or too fast or whatever? Goddard did get a bunch of catches, but he hadn't got diddly squat for yards.
Well, it's almost 4 yards, Jody. It's almost 4 yards a game. That's tremendous.
Come on. What seems to be the problem with Dallas Goedert and his not being able to get downfield?
Yeah. I mean, they're focused on him clearly, as well as the outside receivers. But, I mean, somebody's got to be open. But, Dallas last year led all tight ends in yards after the catch and yards per catch. But in the Vikings game, you mentioned the 6 for 22. He had 8 yards after the catch. 8. I mean, that's just embarrassing. And it's not his fault. Every time he caught the ball, there was somebody draped all over him. So, I mean, that's where play design comes in here. I mean, that's what they've, have been spending these last week and change doing, trying to figure out, ways to get him open, ways to get the deep ball out. We'll see. I agree with John. This is Tampa has a terrific defense, but I mean, this is the week this offense needs to come into its own and be what it was last year.
With Brian Johnson, because he's taken a lot of heat. I thought he did a good job against Minnesota. I thought, they came in with a plan and they got some curveballs from Brian Flores and they adjusted on the fly and said, all right, you're going to play these light boxes. What Shane used to do. He did the same thing against Green Bay. You're going to keep doing this? We're going to keep running the football. And they just went inside zone basically to the finish line. I think that's good. I think that's a positive. And now Jalen was talking yesterday, Damo. He gave his when did the main thing not become the main thing, which is winning football games. But it seems like offensively, and we're going to talk about the defense because you did a nice job. Like they're giving up a ton of touchdowns through the air early. Pass defense has been very poor statistically. That doesn't seem to be a problem. But on the offense, style points seems to be a problem. Why do you think that is?
Well, because, everybody saw what this offense was capable of last year. Third in the league in scoring, 46% third down percentage. Their run. They were a team there aren't too many teams that were able to run and pass as well as the Eagles last year. You stopped one or slowed down one, they beat you the other way. And then you had Jalen, who could run. Their RPO averages this year, John, are I don't have the numbers in front of me, but like last year they averaged, I want to say 9.4 yards per RPO play. That's both run and pass. This year it's it's below 4 right now.
Wow.
Because teams are playing zone. They're mixing up their fronts.
Yeah.
They're staying in their gaps. They're doing it. You watched Jalen when he does some of those zone reads. There's somebody there. There's nowhere to run. They're taking away those big running lanes he had last year, and that kind of triggers everything else that's been going wrong so far. I agree with Jalen. They're 2-0, and that's the important thing. But, that's what you do. That's what Nick Sirianni's been doing. He's looking at those 2 games and saying, this isn't good enough because we have to improve. Now, I talked to Mike Quick the other day. Mike Quick blames most of it on the fact that they didn't play in the preseason. The starters didn't, and these 2 games have been their preseason. To some degree, I think he's correct. But to others, I think you've had Belichick and Flores, who had an entire offseason, like every other coordinator in this league, to prepare for this offense, to come up with a way to defend it that they didn't last year. And that's I think one of the things we're seeing here.
Yeah.
You know why I don't buy that, Damo? And you know that, well, I know John knows, and you're on often enough that you know I'm a proponent of actually, I don't know, like practicing in preseason, although the Eagles seem to want to do less of that than maybe any other team in the National Football League. The reason I don't buy it is they got 9 of their 11 starters back. The only change is at running back and at right guard. And oh, by the way, right guard has looked pretty good. I've not seen that big a drop off from Isaac Sayamala to Cam Jurgen. So if you filled one of the holes significantly well enough for the first 2 games, the only change you made was running back. You got 10 out of the same 11 guys. They can't remember back to last year. What they do all off season that had to forget how successful they were last year. I thought they needed much more work on the defensive side of the ball during the offseason than the offensive side of the ball. So I'm not giving them a pass because, they didn't get enough practice time in. They should still be able to be the same offense they were last year.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, I think the one thing I'll say is, I mean, I want my quarterback to get hit in the preseason. I don't want him coming into the first game in week 1 not having really taken a good lick, because I just think that's important. So, I mean, Mike doesn't think, despite what Nick has said about, I may have to reevaluate next year. He doesn't think Nick means that. I mean, he thinks he meant it then. He thinks that if they play, if they have a good year, they go to the playoffs, deep into the playoffs next year, you won't see the starters play
Same
again.
Exact thing. I agree with you, Mike.
Now, I'm going to give you a Charlie Weiss thing that always stuck with me. I was talking to Charlie once, Damo, and when he was coaching at Notre Dame, he would talk about, they would play Navy every year. It's like, you can't prepare for Navy. You got 1 week. That's it. So you look like, at times, you look really bad. Now, ultimately, Notre Dame would out-talent them. But there were times where they looked terrible, because you can't spend a lot of time practicing for the triple option because nobody else runs it unless you're, there's a couple teams, but you get the point. So it's like, we got 1 week to figure this thing out, and you kind of look a little bit goofy. Brian Flores specifically, not like that. There's nothing like that in the NFL. But compared to everybody else, he's like way off the page. That's why I like him. He leads the league in blitzing, and he leads the league in 8-man coverages. Same team. Yeah. He throws, what I'm trying to say is, he throws some wacky stuff out there. And you're not going to see that every week. And it does make you uncomfortable. Kelsey called it chaos. They're throwing chaos at us. And I think as it slowly settles down to more conventional defenses, I think the Eagles will look better. Or am I giving them too much credit?
No, I don't disagree with that. I mean, I think you're probably right. I don't think they're going to see too many teams that are as unafraid to throw cover zeros at them, blitz zeros as Flores is. So, I mean, this offense is just too good not to make improvement over these first 2 games. So I'm not terribly concerned. I mean, Jalen's, I'm sure, taking it personally and is going to, has been, he knows what he's not doing right and what he's, so, I mean, they'll straighten it out. I think that's why I think this game is so important, because they're playing a good defense, but they've had 11 days to prepare. So, I mean, that's if they're playing a horrible defense, you can't put too much credence in what might happen. But if they can go out there this week against Tampa and play well offensively, they can build on that.
All right, Damo, need your take on the Eagles' diva wide receiver. And I'm calling a diva wide receiver for this week. He can lose the diva tag in 48, 72 hours, somewhere thereabouts. But after talking to the media yesterday and trying to spin, well, I was too upset to talk to you guys on Sunday, but it was nothing. If you're too upset to talk to us, how is it nothing there, big guy? So I wasn't buying what he was selling yesterday, but I don't think AJ's going to be a continued problem going forward. Or should I? wide receiver's a wide receiver. He's surely not alone. He would just be joining the wide receiver diva club in the National Football League. But this isn't going to fester or become an issue for the Eagles over the course of the year, is it?
I can't imagine it will be. I mean, for God's sakes, this is the godfather of his daughter throwing him the ball. I mean, if you're gonna pull a Terrell Owens versus Donovan McNabb on the godfather of your child, there's no hope. No, I think he was frustrated, clearly. I watched it several times, trying to see what, get a gauge on Jalen's reaction. He just kind of like let him have his say. Probably said, "I hear you." I don't think it's going to fester.
No, he called it Nick called it a 2 out of a 10. He called it a half of a 1, so 0.5. Interesting way to say 0.5, but I do think it was more than that, but not because of the argument or that kind of stuff happens, and you need to have, AJ explained, you need to have uncomfortable conversations, accountability, all that kind of stuff, which I agree with. But I think it revealed, Damo, that they're really tightly wound, this group, because AJ talks to us all the time. He's got no problem talking. He bolted out of the locker room. Nick had that, I don't know, what are you talking about? Like the Amazon camera. Everybody caught it, and it was our buddy Tim McManus who brought up, well, you were on TV talking to them. What'd you say? And then he had to address it. So that to me, and by the way, it took him, it was like a loss when it came to opening up the locker room. Typically after a win, everybody's happy. The thing opens up after the 10. No, it was like a loss. It was like they lost the game. I think they're tightly wound and the expectations are there. Nick kind of talked about that a little bit yesterday. I think for the most part, they do a good job ignoring it, but you can't, that stuff seeps in, don't you think?
Yeah. And here's the deal. I mean, as everyone knows, there's one ball. They've got two of the best wide receivers in the league, and then you add Goddard on top of that.
And now DeAndre's got to get the ball, and everybody's got to get the ball, and they wanted Bijan Robinson, but there's one football. I've been talking about it since the Bijan days. Yeah,
and Devontae. I mean, AJ can say how close he and Devontae are, and they are. I mean, but still, they're competitive. And there's more at stake here. I mean, you can go and look at the fact that AJ's guaranteed money runs out after 2024. So, he's looking towards the future. He wants to be here. Devontae wants to be here. One of them's probably going to be gone. If I had to guess, it's going to be AJ. I mean, they're looking at 2 more years together. And then there's probably going to be a situation where the cap just isn't going to allow you to have 2 receivers making that kind of money. So, those things play into what's happening. I don't think it's at the forefront. I think it'll get worked out for now, but it'll always be there. I mean, that's the way and plus the mentality of wide receivers is like, they're crazy. I mean, it's, this doesn't happen in any other position. These guys just that's just the way they're. You mentioned the way the team's tightly wound. I mean, every wide receiver in this league is tightly wound.
Right. So, even when things are going well, I agree with you on that. I want to jump back over to the defense for a second because we haven't focused enough on the fact that the Eagles linebackers are 2 big question marks right now. Last week, both weeks, tight end touchdowns, probably linebackers in coverage. This was not the linebacking core that we thought we were going to get. Well, Nicholas Morrow was signed to be the starting linebacker, and then he was cut, and he came back to the practice squad. Now he's back in starting again. So the Nicholas Morrow dynamic has gone up and down and up and down and up and down.
It's like
we're all wondering about how they're going to replace Avonte Maddox. Should they be looking to upgrade at linebacker right now?
Well, I mean, they're going to be getting Kobe Dean back in 2 games, theoretically.
I don't know. I heard
you know that?
4 to 6 weeks. So
I
it might
don't
be
know that.
6.
Yeah, I mean, John has a better feel for it than I do. So I don't know.
It might be, but it might be a little.
I don't think it's totally the linebackers. I mean, safeties too. I mean, the middle of the field's just been a fertile area for opposing offenses. I think in their mind they feel that everything's going to work out if, and then you add to that the fact that Avonte Maddox is gone now too. So, and those are things that, Maddox isn't coming back. So now they got to figure out what to do about that. I mean, I think that's a bigger problem than linebacker, John, Jody, because I don't know that you really want to move Bradbury inside.
Everybody wants to move him inside, Dama. Why? Explain it to me.
I know, and this week it would be fine because Mike Evans plays inside a lot. Mike Evans is 6'3", a big corner going against a big wide receiver. But most slot guys are smaller. You got to be, inside. You got to be quickness with a exceptional change of direction, and you have to know what you're doing inside. Avonte did. He just couldn't stay healthy. So I don't think, if you ask me right now what trade they need to make before the deadline, my feeling is position wise, it's to get corner. Yeah.
Now, if I'm Tampa Bay, and because I've heard that a lot, Evans is playing more in the slot. So I looked it up. He's played exactly 100 snaps. He's played 15 in the slot, so he's still outside way more. But if they did want him to move inside, well, then I just pick on Josh Jobe outside if you want to do that. And by the way, I'm moving Evans. So, all right, if they're going to play Bradbury in the slot, I'm going to move him outside and put Chris Godwin in the slot and vice versa, because Chris Godwin can play in the slot and is really effective. Now, I don't know if they're savvy enough to do that or Baker Mayfield's good enough to take advantage of that type of situation. But my larger point, Tomo, is he's an all-pro outside corner. At what point does Howie go, I'm not paying $13 million for a stinking slot corner? He's an all-pro outside corner. Play him outside. Now, I think they are going to play him outside. But if they don't, I think it's fair to criticize this defensive plan. I'm not taking up all-pro outside corner and putting him in the slot. It doesn't make sense to me, Damo. Make it make sense.
I can't. That's why I agree with you. I don't think it'll happen. You don't take a guy like Bradbury and move him inside where he's not nearly as effective and as good. So, I mean, I think they're putting everything on their pass rush. They feel like pass rush can erase all other ills. And so far, the pressures are exceptionally high. The sacks aren't, only 4, because Mac Jones was getting the ball out, I think, like 0.1 second after
he was sped up, man.
Yeah. Kirk Cousins doesn't. I mean, that's not the way he operates, but even he was getting it out quicker than usual. Baker's the same way. Baker's a guy that for most of his career has hung on to the ball, and it's been his downfall. Well, they've clearly have told him, you need to get it out. He's only been sacked once this year so far. You've got to make him hold the ball. You've got to stay on his receivers early, and so make him look for that second read. So we'll see what happens this week. I'm not a big believer in Baker Mayfield, so I think they're going to just hammer him this week. I think their sack total is I think they'll have about 4 of them this week and a lot of pressures, and I think they'll force Baker into a couple turnovers.
Yeah, they always get a lot of pressures.
Damo, the Avonte Maddox loss is a significant one for the Eagles. I think we all agree that. But it's not as significant as Trayvon Diggs going down for the Cowboys.
Oh, that is a brutal. Yeah, that's a bad injury.
Yeah.
The Cowboys, good luck trying to replace him. We're debating on whether you do or don't move Bradbury into the slot and the like. All right, fine. They don't have anybody coming off the bench. It's going to be Trayvon Diggs for them. So I would say for the Eagles, if you're worried about, the injury bug is biting us, it's biting Dallas harder than it is Philadelphia.
Oh yeah, that's why I said as good as Dallas. I said that this week. I feel like I jinxed them. Not that Eagles fans care, but they look so good the first 2 weeks. But you have one injury at the wrong position. I mentioned Micah and Tony Pollard. I mean, they don't have anything at running back. Diggs as well. One injury can affect you that much. But I'll leave it here with you at PDamo. Make sure you follow Paul, his stat package up at JAKIBSports.com. Now, you led this week with the Eagles pass defense, and it hasn't been good. Now, part of that is injury related. Bradbury was out with the concussion. Reed was out with the rib injury. Avante, we know, got knocked out. But the Eagles are giving up a lot of touchdown passes, a lot of yardage. Now, part of it is they're ahead and teams can't run against them. So you factor that all in. But I'm not in love with this pass defense, and they seem to be getting a pass. And I brought that up with the offense. Everybody's all over the offense. The defense, we're winning games. Are you concerned with this pass defense? Because I'm with you. They're putting everything on this defensive front.
Yeah.
Either they perform or it's going to be bad.
No, I mean, I am concerned watching these first two games. I put a lot of credence in how you play both offensively and defensively on third down and in the red zone. Well, in these first two games, the defense has been horrible on both. Kirk Cousins, the Vikings were 4 for 4 in the red zone touchdown rate wise. All 4 touchdowns came on Cousins touchdown passes. They're down, same thing. They're I think Cousins, like 6 of his 7 completions were produced first downs. Teams are converting third and longs because of their success through the air. I mean, that's got to change or it'll be their downfall. I mean, this is a terrific rush. And I think Jalen Carter, I mentioned this and I was kind of caught up in the moment, but I mean, I think ultimately right now you can look at Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis and actually see and don't laugh, but you could see Reggie White and Jerome Brown.
No, people, I've been here, you know why? Because Seth said compare Jalen Carter to Jerome Brown. And I said, and I'm the same as you. I said, look, people are going to get mad at me, but Jalen Carter's way more athletic than Jerome Brown. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be that player because a lot more comes into it, but just the pure athleticism. I mean, Jalen Carter's just unbelievable. The size and that speed.
And Jordan Davis is not far behind athletic wise. That's what I mean. I remember talking to Tom Brady years ago and talking to Mike Mayock, when he was with the NFL Network, about quarterbacks he had talked to. And the thing that scared them all, the thing that they hated most, was a team that could rush the interior, that could put pressure on you inside. Yeah. You got nowhere to run. Yeah. They're coming right at you. You can dodge edge rushers no matter how good they are. You step up if there's a pocket. That is going to be pivotal with this pass rush. But, what we're seeing right now is teams, you're going to see it this week. Baker's going to try to get the ball out quickly. They've got to figure out a way to make him hold it. If they can, they win this game probably comfortably. If they can't, Mike Evans might have 13 catches for 180 yards.
Ooh. For a guy who's got an issue with his contract, he sure doesn't show it. Maybe AJ. Well. Can we get AJ talking to Mike Evans before the game? That might be a good idea. By
the way, Mike won't get 13 for 180 if the Eagles keep Bradbury outside. Now, if they move him inside, he might get 13 for 180.
If they move him inside, it might be because the Bucs have moved Evans inside. So you might see a traveling situation in that one. Damo, it's always a pleasure, brother. Great job on the stat pack this week. Thank you for jumping on. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks for having me, guys. Take care.
Thanks, Tom. 33rd team and JAKIBSports.com. Check out his Friday stuff. Is always great for not only Eagles, but taking a peek for the entire week in the National Football League. All right, Johnny Mac, Jody Mac coming back. Tommy Lawler from EaglesBlitz.com going to join us in about 20 here on Birds 365.
If you own a company and you're not producing a podcast, you're missing out. The public consumes messaging when they're ready. Join the professional podcast network of companies and let JAKIB Media Partners put you in the podcast arena. Come to our professional studio or we'll come to your place of business and professionally produce your company podcast. Call JAKIB Media right now at 267-261-3428. 267-261-3428.
Heading down the shore, have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wild wood days.
Score and save in southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com. EAGLES, Eagles.
Appreciate you streaming in here on Birds 365 with your Mac and Mac guys, McMullen and McDonald. Tommy Lawler, EaglesBlitz.com, going to join us in about 15 minutes from now. John talking to Damo about the Eagles and the opposition's quarterbacks who put up numbers against Eagles first 2 weeks. Can't deny it. Mac Jones put up better numbers than Mac Jones usually does. And Kirk Cousins, while in a losing effort, did go 31 of 44 for 340, 364 and 4 touchdowns. Those are pretty damn big numbers. Here's where I'm going to cut the Eagles some slack, but then pull it right back and say it's still on them. Last week's game against the Vikings, their number one safety played 0 snaps, didn't dress. Blankenship out of the game. Their number 1 or 2 corner, if you got 1 and 1A, Slayton Bradbury, didn't play any snaps, out for the game. And your number 1 slot corner played 22% of the snaps before he got hurt. Maddox didn't play a ton. So you're getting, quote unquote, backups in there at those 3 out of your 5 positions. So I'm going to cut the Eagles a little slack there because they got hurt by injuries. Injuries are part of the game, but you have to be able to deal with them. Here's where I pull that slack right back. Again, the Eagles' belief of less is more. In preseason, shorter practices, don't work too hard, don't risk any players with injuries. You were at all those practices. Reed Blankenship ran with the ones for safety work most of the time, correct?
Every single first team rep.
Every single first team rep. So all the other safeties kind of rotated in on the other first team reps. Everybody got a little bit of a chance to prove. How much did Edmund and Evans play together?
Not much, not at all, because Reed, everybody was rotating next to Reed. Everybody. Right. So,
So, and sure enough, in the game, guess what? They had to play together because Reed Blankenship wasn't available. And all preseason, in the somewhat limited work that they do, it was always Reed Blankenship with the ones. Now, I'm not questioning playing Reed Blankenship with the ones until Reed Blankenship gets hurt. And then you've got to get guys out there playing together who haven't had a chance to play together. So I give them a little bit of a break because injuries can make you go to depth. And there's a reason why guys aren't starters, because they're not as good as the starters. That's why they're depth. Yeah. When you need to lean on your depth, you're going to see a drop off. But the Eagles didn't do a good job this offseason for me prepping for that potential drop off.
Well, look, starters are starters and they take first team reps. So I think with Reed, it's a little bit more open-ended because people didn't know he was that entrenched till he became that entrenched. But from the coaching staff's perspective, they identified, all right, this is the guy. This is the guy. And, I go back to my favorite NFL quote, and that's Tom Moore. And I say it all the time. It's easy to understand a quarterback. He got asked that question one time when he was coaching Peyton Manning. Why don't you give the backup? What happens if Peyton why don't you give the backup some first team reps? And he looked at the guy and he said, if 18 gets hurt, we're bleeped, and we don't practice bleeped. You don't practice. I could say it on YouTube. You don't practice bucked. You play your starters. You practice your starters. If they're healthy, first team reps. That's at every position, not just quarterback. And it replicates the safety. So I'm not going to kill him for that. But, Damo led with that in the stat package. Look, yeah, there are contextual reasons they were so poor. Bradbury's not out there. Blankenship's not out there. Avante gets hurt in the second quarter. That's pretty significant. So that's part of it. But as you just mentioned, nobody in Philadelphia is crying for Dallas today. They lose Trayvon Diggs. You got to deal with it. They're not getting Avante Maddox back. And we're having all these questions of, are you going to move Bradbury inside? Are you going to play Goodrich? Are you going to play Jobe outside? Blah, blah, blah. So, that's part of the NFL. You got to deal with injuries. And they were not successful dealing with the Minnesota passing game when the game should have been over. They were one-dimensional. They couldn't run the football at all. So you can kind of look at it both ways, Jody. They did what they wanted to do. They took the running game completely off the table. They made them one-dimensional. They knew they had to throw the football, and they still couldn't stop them. And they got, in theory, back in the game, at least from a number standpoint. And the numbers are, as you mentioned, Kirk's numbers are what they are. 4 touchdowns, huge passer rating, huge yardage. And they were one-dimensional. I think it's a concern. And more so because of Mac Jones. Kirk, we talk about it all the time. He has big games all the time. He's a high volume thrower, as I call it. He has big games. But Mac Jones does not. And they were giving up pretty significant, and they were healthier. Reed was out there. Avante was out there. So even that's probably a little bit more concerning. I don't think the secondary, I liked obviously the outside corners, but other than that, I don't think the secondary is that good this year.
I'm sitting on the fence with Blankenship as to whether I'm just ready to say, yeah, he's good. He'll be fine. Not a big drop off from where you were last year with absent CJGJ. He might not be coming up with the picks that Gardner Johnson did, but he'll be just a good, just solid a guy. you're just ready to go there, and boom, he misses the game. Yeah, I was leaning in that direction. I was with the Eagles coaching staff on that. Okay, he's our best safety. He's the guy we're relying on. He's going to be the guy who's going to come up and make the stop when we need it on a short 9-yard 3rd and 9. He's going to get the guy down at 8 yards downfield and make the other team punt. But then he went ahead and got hurt. So I'm kind of with you on this, Johnny. They still got stuff to prove in the secondary. If Slay and Bradbury are Slay and Bradbury, fine. But everywhere else is still on a kind of show me mode.
I'm not as worried about the durability aspect yet, because it was a short week. You know, it's weird week 2. I think he would have played if it were a Sunday game. I think they were being cautious. So I'm not too concerned about that yet. And he played, he was a 5-year starter in college. You know, he never got hurt. But I mean, yeah, when you don't play, you don't play. You got to put a little asterisk there, even on a short week. And we're talking about it, you know, the Kobe a lot. And it unfortunately came to pass, and he's going to miss at least 4 games, maybe 5 or 6. So you always have to worry about availability, but I'm willing to overlook that if, you know, I'm sure he's going to play on Monday night. And if everything is copacetic from that point forward, and maybe we go back to the off season, they got a bunch of rib injuries, right? Sounds like soreness to me with Gainwell and Blankenship and Fletcher. They all had rib injuries. They weren't broken. Fletch played. I saw both of them. They weren't broken. They were sore from taking that pounding. Well, they didn't, you know, they're not the only team, but they have no live reps in the preseason. Those guys barely played. They played a little bit, not Fletch, but Kenny and did Reed play? I don't even think Reed played. I don't think he played. So I think that factors into it as well. You know, but yeah, that Thursday game on this week 2 is just weird. I think I'd like to get rid of Thursday football completely, but I'd especially like to get rid of it early. You know, it's like, week 2, the Thursday game. That's terrible.
They're all the same. If it's Thursday, it's Thursday. It's not good. It doesn't matter whether it's week 2 or week 10 or week 16. I'm not a fan of.
But
Thursday,
it does matter. I mean, well, Bradbury, from that perspective, I mean, Jody, you can't get through that stinking protocol the way they set it up for a Thursday game. You can get through it for a Sunday game, but you can't get through it for a Thursday game.
Right.
So
but what's the difference between week 2, week 10, week 16? If you take a knock on the head, you got to get through the protocol. Doesn't matter where in the calendar it happens. It's a Thursday game is a short week, and if you're trying to get through concussion protocol, you're screwed. Doesn't matter when it happens.
No, and I meant from the injury standpoint, Thursday differs dramatically from Sunday. That's all I'm saying from an injury standpoint. Right. It differs dramatically, and that's why I think you should ban Thursday football. But obviously, I'm not going to win that argument with the NFL.
All right, and speaking of Thursday football, 49ers looked pretty good last night. Now, you know I'm a Brock Purdy fan. I'll tell you, Brock Purdy didn't play all that well. He had a couple of passes that he got lucky on. One was just a major tip up in the air that should have been picked that ends up being like a 15-yard gain because the ball gets tipped up in the air and the guy grabs it. He didn't play well in the first half, played better in the second half. That's pretty good when you don't play well and you throw for 300 and change yards and 2 touchdowns. That's
Kyle, baby. Kyle Shanahan. For all those people that, and I'm one of them, by the way, that can't stand the Eagles bubble screen. Well, they run it pretty stinking well. They're converting 3rd and 13s and 3rd and 15s with bubble screens to Deebo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey. Now, part of it is those are great players.
Yeah, they're kind of talented players, Johnny. I think I could draw up some plays for Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, and Craig Kittle.
Well, you know, Christian is generational. I talk about it all the time. Generational player. Deebo's very good. George Kittle's very good. I'm not trying to dismiss. I always say talent first. But if you don't block, if you don't execute on those plays, I don't care if it's Christian McCaffrey, you're going nowhere. The Eagles don't run those plays well. I don't know who to blame, but they don't run those plays well. San Francisco does. I mean, I was watching the one drive, Jody. Giants gave up 3rd and 13 and 3rd and 15.
Yep.
One was a bubble screen to Debo. One was a traditional screen to McCaffrey. The Eagles don't do that well. The 49ers do. Now, Eagles fans are going to lose their minds because they hate the 49ers. The Eagles destroyed them in the NFC Championship game. I get that. I'm talking about this limited part of the game. San Francisco does it well. The Eagles don't. And the Eagles need to either get better at it or scrap it, one or the other.
On a night where Purdy did not throw the ball all that well. 25, 37, 310, 2 touchdowns, 111 passer rating. It's pretty damn good.
Well, Ralph Vacchiano, I'll give him credit. Friend of the show, has been on the show.
Damn, I got to get Ralph on again. He says he loves
this.
coming on. He just hasn't been able to work it out schedule-wise.
Yeah, he had 2 great stats. The first was Wink Martindale blitzed 84.6% of the dropbacks. 84.6%. And then the second one is the 49ers, of that 310 passing yards, 215 after the catch.
But that's the design of the offense. You're right.
Yeah.
That's what they do. Birdie gets it out of his hands quickly and just gives his guys the chance to make the play. And guess what? McCaffrey and Kittle and Debo didn't even have Ayuk. They're missing one of their key components last night.
They didn't even have them. Yeah.
And sure enough, Purdy threw for 310 yards. All right. Mac coming back. I see Tommy Lawler. He is ready to join us. He's up next here on Birds 365.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Staffing is not easy, but that's what we do every day, all day. The key to our success is storytelling, asking the right questions to find the right people. Hi, I'm Gary Kane, president of Kane Partners. We want to be your staffing partner.
Since 1977, it's always been about you, the community, at Rafferty Subaru. And through the Subaru Love Promise, we prove we care by supporting charities like So Good Now.
So Good Now helps kids in under-resourced areas by connecting them with student athletes to serve as mentors. We remove barriers so athletes can help youth in the corners of our communities where light and love are needed most.
When you choose Rafferty Subaru, you help organizations like So Good Now.
It's all about you at Rafferty Subaru.
you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News.
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES. Eagles.
Mac here with you on Birds 365, and we've got our guy from down south these days here in Philadelphia. For years as an Eagle reporter, still reports on the Eagles on his own website, eaglesblitz.com. Tommy Lawler jumps in with me on Birds 365. Tommy, I'm going to set the over-under rushing yards for DeAndre Swift at 174.5 since he had 175 last week. You taking the under or the over?
Oh, over for sure, of course.
Not likely, my friend.
I got some beachfront property in Nebraska. I want to sell you too.
I'm gonna go. I'm gonna put a more legitimate number. See how we can go. I'm gonna say 50. Give me over or under, Tommy.
I'll say over that, but it won't be substantially over that because the Bucs have an outstanding run defense, and they're gonna. Even if they play a light box like Minnesota did last week with Vita Vea in the middle and some of the guys they have, they're just better run defenders. So even if they go light in the box, the Eagles aren't going to have the success they did last week.
Your thoughts on Brian Johnson, Tommy, to date? Because I was pretty impressed last week. The Eagles obviously came into the game with a game plan and it wasn't working. And you mentioned those light boxes and Minnesota wasn't coming out of them, and they said, all right, we're just going to run inside zone to the finish line. And they ran inside zone to the finish line. They won the football game. I think that's a check mark in his column. Seems like everybody's upset, though, with Brian Johnson to this point.
No, I made the point in something I wrote recently. If you go back to Super Bowl, I think it was Super Bowl 36, Bill Belichick was facing Mike Martz and the Rams. And Belichick played a defense that dared Mike Martz to run. And because, he had Torrey Holt and he had all those receivers that were so explosive, Belichick knew exactly. And Oz Hakeem and just on down the line, he didn't want any part of that passing offense getting going. So he played a light box. Well, Marshall Faulk ran 21 times in that game. The Rams ran 22. They threw 44 passes. So Mike Martz, despite having a light box, said, we're a passing team, we're going to throw it, and they scored 17 points and lost the Super Bowl. Yeah. Brian Johnson said, hey, listen, you're playing a light box. DeAndre Swift's going to be player of the week for the NFC. And he fed his guy. And don't force something. If they're giving you something, take it. The Eagles offensive line got to go knock the crap out of Vikings defenders. Landon Dickerson and Jordan Mailata were the two happiest people in Philadelphia last Thursday. They loved it. And then DeAndre Swift just kept running and running and running, and Minnesota couldn't stop him. Why would you stop him yourself? Make them stop him before you change it. So that's good coaching.
Tommy, need your analysis on this. And it may sound like I'm harping on it because I am, because I may have bet on it in the game last Thursday night. I went Dallas Goedert yardage rather than catches. My mistake. 6 catches for 22 yards. John corrected my math earlier. It's less than 4 yards a catch. It's 3 and change. I said it was 2 and change per yards. 3 and change not good enough either. You get 6 catches, you're going to get more than 22 yards. He didn't. Is that on Goddard? Is that on Hurts? Or is that on the design of the play, Brian Johnson et al., Sirianni, Kevin Patullo, put whoever you want into that mix? How do you have a 6-catch, 22-yard day that Dallas Goedert had against the Vikings?
You left out the defense, Jody. The Vikings, when they would drop back 6, 7, 8 guys, they said throw it, drop it off to somebody short. And when we dropped it off to somebody short, the Vikings were there to make the tackles. Goddard could not get going in space. There was always defenders right there on him. So give the Vikings credit. They had an unusual scheme that they ran. They ran it very effectively. It affected the passing game in a big way. And, part of it is Jalen Hurts not feeling comfortable in the pocket and making good reads on a consistent basis. And so there might have been other plays where Goddard was open and Hurts just wasn't seeing him. But when he did get him the football, the Vikings rallied and made quick tackles. So the design of their defense worked in that part of the passing game.
Yeah, I mentioned Brian Flores a couple times over the past week and a half, and Jody knows I'm a big fan of Brian, and he does stuff. And the reason I like him is because I like unique people. I don't like copycats. Like, I don't like the Fangio defense because everybody plays it. I don't want the copycat. I want the guy who's going to do things differently, the so-called, zig when everybody else is acting. Now, you got to be successful at it as well. But from the Eagles standpoint, I think, they're not going to see what Minnesota did. Like, he does some wacky stuff. He leads the league in blitzes, and he also leads the league in 8-man coverages, which is weird beyond belief.
No, it's very weird. Yeah.
No perspective. So I think Jalen's going to get more comfortable. Jason Kelsey called it chaos this week. They were throwing chaos at us. And I do think it was a little bit unsure, but I have some comfort that you're not going to see that every week. So things are going to settle down, and I think he's going to settle down. Or do you have more concern over Jalen's early play?
No, I think your point is exactly right. So I think Bill Belichick in the season opener did some creative things defensively. Flores did very creative things defensively. That was a highly unusual defense. And I think we're going to see more of that on Monday night with Todd Bowles. Again, another coach who can kind of do some unusual things. So this is good, right? You want Jalen Hurts to be tested. As much fun as it is to watch the Eagles drop back and just destroy people, and trust me, 2022 was a lot of fun, right? But there's going to be games when you're going to run up against a good defense, and if you've been tested, you'll be ready for those games. And the Eagles, sometimes last year with things being so easy, weren't always ready for those tests. So I think this is good for them to work through this to be better prepared for down the line when they're going to face some defenses that are good, that may not be as creative, but are still going to make life tough on them. The Eagles need to be able to have answers, whether it's to run the football, to throw short, to throw left, or throw right. Whatever they need to do, they'll be able to have more answers because they've been tested and they've had to be creative and do some different things in these first couple of weeks. Jalen Hurts has got to get better. There's no question, but really from week 1 to week 2, because it was such a short week, they didn't have much of a chance to correct problems from week 1. Now they've had an extended break. So I'm really curious to see how Hurts plays on Monday, because the coaches have had time to study what they want to see improved, to look at the Bucs defense, to fix the Eagles offense. So Monday is going to give us a better barometer of where this offense is in my mind.
Tommy, through 2 games, the Eagles are +4 on the turnover ratio scale. They've come up with 5 takeaways, but Jalen Hurts had an INT. So at +4, they're tied for 3rd best in the league. That's very good, except for the Bucs being 2nd, who have 5 turnovers and haven't turned it over once themselves. So they're +5. Is this going to be a turnover type game, since both teams seem to be pretty good at getting them? The Bucs have not given one up yet. The Eagles have been a team that's always tried to be aggressive, despite Gannon being their head coach. The side's been a little bit more aggressive. How much did the turnovers affect the outcome of the game on Sunday for your take?
Well, if you look, the thing that both teams have in common is that Minnesota gave the football to both of them.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
3 turnovers.
They're
by
giving
the Vikings,
away the football.
They're very generous of Kirk Cousins and the Vikings. 3 turnovers to Tampa in the opener and 4 to the Eagles in week 2. So whoever Minnesota plays this week, I guess we'll be looking to get 5.
And they should, by the way, the Eagles should add 5, but Contavious Street was offside, lined up offside when
and
Mario
talk about
Goodrich
a useless
forced
offside.
the fumble. Yeah.
And really, Darius Slay had a chance for a couple of interceptions. The Eagles could have had even more. They could have had a wild 6-7 takeaway game, but they got 4, which is still pretty darn good. The Eagles have been very opportunistic on defense. So have the Bucs. Again, both teams did well by playing Minnesota. So it'll be interesting to see. The Vikings have done a better job protecting the football. They've also played a couple of defenses that aren't exactly compelling. Minnesota, we just saw last week, is not exactly the 85
Yeah.
Bears. And speaking of the Bears,
Oof.
you know, I don't even know what to say about the Bears at this point. So that's a bit of a mystery there.
I don't like, I'm sure Ryan Poles is a nice man, but I would, and when I watched Jalen Carter play, and I say that team passed on him twice in essence, because they could have taken him at number 1 overall, but I understand why they didn't take him at number 1 because of the off the field issues and all that stuff. But then they dropped down and they could have had him again, Tommy, and they were still afraid. And all of a sudden he lands in the lap of the Eagles, and boy, he's been impressive. I'm concerned about the secondary as a whole, not the corners, the outside corners, obviously, but the secondary as a whole. But this pass rush, and a lot of it is, by the way, Javon Hargrave is doing a tremendous job with San Francisco. People saw him play last night. And the Eagles got better. I'm going to say it right now. The Eagles got better than Javon Hargrave. That's how good Jalen Carter is.
He is a stud. There's absolutely no question. And the pick looks like a phenomenal pick. And the Eagles are loaded up front. Teams are firing the ball out quickly, so we haven't seen a bunch of sacks. But Kirk Cousins, go back and rewatch that game. He got knocked to the ground hard quite a bit.
That's every game for poor Kirk.
That's
even
Kirk.
Worse. Even worse.
Yeah.
He's a tough guy, man. I will give him that.
Oh, absolutely. I'll listen. I'll never question his toughness. There's no question about that. The Eagles are punishing quarterbacks right now, even though they don't have a great sack total. They're getting some big shots on guys, and it's fun to watch. And the best part about it is, aside from BG and Fletcher Cox, these are young guys,
Yeah.
And this front seven is going to be good for a while, because you're going to see guys like Nolan Smith start to get better. Carter's going to get better. We've already seen Davis get better from last year. You got backups like Tui. He's going to get better. Milton Williams is playing good football. So there's a lot of bodies up there. And the Eagles, this front seven ain't going anywhere for a while. And it's not just one dude. It's a group that they've built. And that's what gives you real hope this could become a really good defense in the next few years.
And then, Tommy, there's linebacker, where they're using a guy who they picked up off the street, had all off season to sign, couldn't find himself a job till into preseason, and the Eagles bring him in from camp, and he's going to start his 3rd consecutive game. Then they have a linebacker that they thought so highly of. They released him in preseason, cut him, no guaranteed money. See you later, bye, Nicholas Morrow. And then when need be, luckily he's still out there on the street. They re-sign him, they throw him into the starting lineup, and they give him the green dot on his helmet. It's not exactly the same. The Eagles linebacker position isn't exactly the Eagles defensive line, as you just ran down. Good, deep, young. Eagles linebacker positions. Journeyman, questionable. I got no idea what they're going to do for him this week. How questionable should we be for the Eagle linebacker position right now?
Well, I actually thought Zach Cunningham played pretty well against the Vikings. He was a good run defender.
So let me ask you a question. No, Tommy,
Yeah, for sure.
Like
Go ahead.
John just said, shame on the Chicago Bears. How could they pass on the best player in the draft? Not once, but twice. Should the rest of the league be saying that about Zach Cunningham? Shame on them. How did no one sign Zach Cunningham until July? Oh, my God. How did he last that long? Yeah. Come on. He's Zach Cunningham.
No, we're not going to make him out to be something he's not. But the Eagles asked him to come in, be a good tackler, be a good run defender. He did. In the past game, if the ball's thrown in front of him, like there was a play that they threw a running back in the flat, Zach's 4 or 5 yards off him, close to the ball, tackled him very quickly. He's good in those situations where he got exposed, and we saw that more in the season opener than last week. When you have him against a tight end in space, it's over. The tight end is going to win. And right now, that's a weakness for the Eagles because Nick Morrow is not much better in that situation. And so teams that have the quarterback focuses on the tight end, gets good protection, and the tight end's able to make a couple of moves, he's going to get open. And then it's a case of, can you limit the gain that the tight end gets? So while Zach Cunningham, like I say, I think he's played well to a certain extent, there's still a big hole in his game. And there's no question the Eagles, when you build your roster, you have to choose somewhere to be a weak spot. Obviously, they've chosen to put their fewest resources into linebacker.
By the way, I want to give Sean Desai credit for that. You mentioned, Tommy, he didn't put Zach Cunningham near TJ Hawkinson, and that was after week 1 where they struggled with Hunter Henry. I think that's a positive. We talked about a positive for Brian Johnson. I think that was a positive for Sean Desai. But I asked Damo this early. We had Paul Domowich on. I'm going to ask you because I need somebody to make this make sense. Why is everybody obsessed with moving James Bradbury in the slot? This is an all-pro outside cornerback. I can't move an all-pro outside cornerback in the slot because, oh, he's my best slot guy because Avonte got hurt and Zach McPherson got hurt. You're weakening 2 positions. Make it make sense to me, Tommy.
So apparently Tampa Bay in the past has always played Mike Evans outside. This year they've started to mix him into the slot some. Well, the Mike Evans is a big dude, right? 6'5". If you put him against a traditional slot corner, 5'10", he's going to have a huge size advantage. If you're going against Mike Evans out of the slot, then putting James Bradbury in there does make sense because you've all of a sudden got a 6'2" corner with long arms to cover a guy who's 6'5". So and
I'm fine from a limited standpoint. And last week, I think you might have seen him against Hawkinson if he didn't have the concussion. I'm fine with that. I'm talking, when Kelsey comes in here later, glorified, flex receiver. Yeah, okay. But full time, like he's playing Avonte Maddox level of snaps in the slot.
Yeah, the only reason you do that is if you feel that strongly about getting Josh Jobe onto the field at outside corner, because you're saying to yourself, with Avonte Maddox out, we don't like our backups in the slot very much. So let's move Bradbury in there, and we do like our backups on the outside better. So that's why you would do that. Mario Goodrich obviously struggled in Thursday night's game. Hopefully he'll be in a better situation this week, knowing he's going to play, being able to really prepare and get ready. Plus, he's got some snaps under his belt. He's seen what it's like to be on the field in a real game. So we'll see if he's able to learn from that. But yeah, there may be something they like about it that they just haven't talked about because you know how secretive Nick Sirianni loves to be.
Yes,
he doesn't want anybody to know
Yes,
anything, right?
Yeah.
So once the cat's out of the bag, Sirianni or Desai may open up a little bit and say, here's what we're thinking, here's what we're doing. But for now, it really is a projection to say that if they want him in there, it's got to be for a reason. It might be for the size matchup against Evans or guys like you're saying, Kelsey, bigger, like tight ends that they want him to cover. Or it could just be a matter that they feel that strongly about Josh Jobe on the outside. And, he did some good things last week, so I can see where they like him, but he also did give up the long touchdown.
All right, Tommy, I got a hypothetical question for us. And most people hate my hypothetical questions, including everybody here on the stream. Always kills me for my hypothetical question. But sorry, I got to ask it. If Jake Elliott misses a 45-yard field goal, a.k.a. a very makeable one for Jake in this game against Tampa, who's going to get the blame? Jake, the new holder, Howie Roseman for bringing in a new holder, a.k.a. a new punter? Where will the Eagle fan angst go if Jake Elliott misses a makeable field goal this week?
Well, I know. I'm going to put it all on Jody Mack for bringing it up ahead of time. What a jerk.
Yeah.
All right, fine. Everybody hates me. Join the club. They'll crush me here on the stream. You might as well
talk
be
about
one
bad
of them,
karma.
Tommy.
What's up with you, man?
Yeah. I'm not here to serve karma. I'm here to.
By the way, somebody said
make points.
Somebody said we're talking about holders. They have we've been talking about holders all stinking week. Where you been? Holding is a bigger thing than people realize, Tommy, because these kickers can be sensitive creatures. And when something is turned a different way, I bring it up in the preseason. Jake missed one kick. And I told Jody, Ty Zettner was the holder. And by the way, I looked at it backwards and forwards. It was a solid hold. He missed the kick. So 46-yarder. Why'd he miss the kick? He probably wasn't comfortable. He's used to Sipas, got a different guy. All of a sudden, it might be an issue, but it's only an issue if you miss one.
Right. Michael Clay did mention that that Braden Mann and Jake Elliott work out some in the offseason together. So they have a chemistry where they've kicked together, where Mann has done some holding for him. Now, obviously, that's just going to some high school field or some park and kicking the ball a little bit. That's not the same thing as an NFL game with NFL guys rushing and the pressure of the situation. But still, there is something to be said for the fact that they do have a little bit of a chemistry, and so there will be somewhat of a comfort level there. So I'm not overly concerned, but it's something to watch.
No. By the way, I met Braden yesterday. I was shocked. He's a small guy. He's like Jake. He's like the punting version of Jake. You see these punters like Aaron Sipas is this big strapping dude. Yeah, big dude. He's really small. I was surprised. But anyway, it's a nice kid. I think he's going to be fine. I don't think it's going to be an issue. But this is Philadelphia. If he misses one kick, he's been the best kicker in the NFL, not named Justin Tucker. And if he starts missing a kick here and there, it's going to come up. Jody's right from that standpoint.
Oh, yeah. But I'll be maligned.
Absolutely.
You're on the stream because I brought up holding. Yeah, okay. We'll see if it becomes an issue or not. And oh, by the way, you know whose punter I like? The Giant punter. Kicked the snot out of the ball last night in Thursday Night Football. The 49ers defense kept the Giants punting altogether too often, but every time he had a kick, I thought
Isn't that Jamie Gillen or something?
Yeah.
Didn't the Eagles blocked a punt from his?
Last year.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
go with punt.
He boots the snot out of it.
There's a website called Puntalytics, and to me they're the gospel because they're the only ones paying attention to punters, and they say the best punters are AJ Cole from Las Vegas, Tommy Townsend, who was an All-Pro, that makes sense, Kansas City, Johnny Hecker's been great forever, and Jake Camarada, who's Tampa Bay's punter. And JC Allen mentioned him yesterday. Too much punting talk, but I will say this.
Is this just for the first 2 weeks?
First 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Sipas was 29th, and Ty Zettner was 32nd, who's punting for Cam Johnson, who's injured in Houston. So that's who the Eagles had in camp, and now they're trying to get better with Braden Mann. So that's good punting knowledge for you, Tommy. You didn't think you'd get that, did you?
I did not. Let's hope the Eagles see a lot of Tampa's punter on Monday night. That would be fantastic.
Yeah.
I hope he has another good game for Tampa.
Yeah, he's a good punter, evidently.
I just hope he's punting from the 5-yard line consistently.
Tommy, is this the week we see? I'll say the Eagles' best defensive player last year. She was one of the best defensive player in the league. Got votes for defensive player of the year. Hassan Reddick. Playing with the club on his hand has not been as effective. Only he knows for sure how much is it affecting his play. We know the results haven't shown up. The stats haven't shown up yet. How long does this type of injury usually take? Is this the breakout week for Hassan Reddick? Because the Eagles need their pot stirrer getting it going on the defensive line because they're getting great pressure in the middle, but it's not paying dividends on the edge. Is this the week that Hassan breaks through?
Sure, why not? Let's go with that. He's going to be facing a right tackle. It's a young guy, doesn't have a ton of experience, so the matchups there. And Reddick has faced a lot of. He's got the attention of the offenses so far. There have been chip blocks, double teams. People have really said we're not going to let Reddick beat us. And after last Thursday night, they may switch and say, forget it. Let's not let Josh Sweat beat us. Sweat was fantastic.
Well, that's what drives me crazy, Tommy. Like Minnesota has a bad offensive line, but they have good tackles. But Darisaw didn't play, so Josh Sweat got to play against Udo, who was a disaster, and Josh really took advantage of it. Reddick had to play against maybe the best right tackle in football, not named Lane Johnson. Really good player, Brian O'Neill. This week, Josh has got to go against Tristan Wirfs because they moved him over, and he's evidently playing well. So he's got a tough duty. And as you mentioned, Hassan's playing a young kid who just, moved from guard to tackle this year. So maybe, he's got the lighter duty this week. So maybe it is rightful to expect a little bit more from him, and a little bit less from Josh. The opponents out there is what I'm trying to say as well.
That's the beauty of the defense. If you have an offensive line, there's always going to be a weak spot on every offensive line. So the Eagles have guys on the left side, the right side, and the middle. So wherever the weak spot is, they can beat that weak spot, get to the quarterback, pressure the quarterback, affect the quarterback. So last week it was Josh Sweat. Let's hope this week it's Hassan Reddick. That'd be awesome.
All right, Tommy, last question.
Dying to make a big play.
I'm dying to get my last question in here. I'm going to come up short of using the word fear because I fear that would get me crushed on the stream today. So instead, I'll use the word respect. What aspect of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers do you respect most that the Eagles are going to have an answer for? And if they don't, then the game could be hanging in the balance in the 59th minute. I won't say Eagles fear anything about the Bucs, but what should they be most respecting going into this game?
The defense, because the defense is good against the run. We can see they're ranked second or third in the league, I think. And they've also got the ability to rush the passer, and they've got a solid back seven so they can cover and make plays in space. So there's not a lot of obvious weaknesses. Now, the Eagles have some dynamic offensive pieces. They've got some smart coaches, and they've had time to build up a good game plan. So I'm really curious to see how they choose to attack them. We know Tampa in 2021 was able to really shut down Jalen Hurts, but they shut him down more as a runner, right? And Hurts should be a better passer at this point. So they're going to look at see what Todd Bowles did in those 21 games. But if you remember, there were some Eagles receivers running open in those games, and Jalen just wasn't at that point as a passer. He was able to find those receivers to get him the football. He's a much better passer now. So it'll be interesting to see if Tampa plays the same kind of scheme and says, we dare you to beat us as a passer, or if they say, you know what, he's a better player now. Let's let him run. We think we can handle his running. So it's going to be an interesting chess match between Todd Bowles and the Eagles offensive staff, and then how Jalen Hurts is able to make plays.
All right, you went right where I was taking you, Tommy. So well done. At Lawler NFL. Make sure you follow Tommy on X, Twitter, whatever you like to call it these days. EaglesBlitz.com. Here are the numbers. They are not pretty from 2021-22 for Jalen Hurts. And in the regular season game, 12 of 26 for 115 yards. Touchdown, interception, 55.8 passer rating. I think that might have been his worst regular season start, at least since he became the full-time starter. And then in the playoff game, 23 of 43, 258, and a lot of that was garbage. Tampa Bay was destroying them. 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, 60 passer rating. Obviously, he's evolved.
What was the passer rating from the game before?
60.
No, the previous
55.8.
Hey, he's trending up, John. Went from 55 to 60.
Yeah. Is it does Todd Bowles have his number? Because he came in with a really good game plan. It was basically pin him in and pen him in sort of as a runner. And he's got the linebackers to do it because Devin White, Levante David can both run. And then he was flushing him left. Now, Jalen spent a lot of time last offseason trying to improve that part of his game, and he did. So is it going to be evolution versus Todd Bowles?
I'm going to take Jalen Hurts with his physical talent, his work ethic, and his drive. To me, the guy that there's no question in 2021, Todd Bowles won that matchup, and it wasn't even close. This time around, I think Hurts is an evolved player. The Eagles have evolved as an offense. That Eagles offense didn't have A.J. Brown on the field.
Yeah.
So, DeAndre Swift is a more dangerous runner than Miles Sanders. I think we all probably agree with that. So the Eagles have a better core of players. They have a more experienced quarterback, and a coaching staff's also been together. This is year 3 for these guys. So I think they'll put together a good plan. Listen, the Eagles are not going to go score 38 points and have a wild game. Tampa Bay, I think, is too good defensively, but the Eagles should win this game, and Jalen Hurts should be able to make enough plays to lead his team to the victory. And I don't think we'll see a quarterback rating in the 60s.
All right. I'm going to go over on the 60. 55, 60, 65. I'll go over 65.
Go over.
That's how confident I am in Jalen having a good game on Sunday. All right, Tommy, you want to give us a score on the game? You want to take a poke on a score? Eagles against the Bucs?
27-17 Eagles.
Yes.
I kind of like that. I'm going to be in that same neighborhood, I would think, on Monday. Tommy, we always appreciate it when you do hop in. That's Eagles, IGDLES Blitz.com. Puts up 3 or 4 posts a week, insightful, both before and after the game and leading up to it. Tommy, appreciate you jumping in here today. We'll get you back in a couple weeks, big guy.
Great to talk to you, fellas.
Thanks, Tommy.
My pleasure. Tommy Lawler, former Eagles beat guy, now doing it from afar, but he stays right on top of all the Eagles stuff that's coming down. Appreciate him jumping in here. All right, McMullen and McDonald, you know what we got to do? Come back. Put a bow on the show here on Birds 365.
If you own a company and you're not producing a podcast, you're missing out. The public consumes messaging when they're ready. Join the professional podcast network of companies and let JAKIB Media Partners put you in the podcast arena. Come to our professional studio, or we'll come to your place of business and professionally produce your company podcast. Call JAKIB Media right now at 267-261-3428. 267-261-3428.
Heading down the shore. Have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wildwood days.
Score and save in southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, Birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com. EAGLES, Eagles.
You got McDonald and McMullen, a.k.a. Mac and Mac, here with Young Birds 365. No Eagles this Sunday. We'll be back here Monday before the Eagles play. They're not playing the Buccaneers till Monday night, but the good news is 7:15, early game for Johnny Mac Better than the late starting game.
Not
And I
early,
get
but
it.
it's better. It's better.
You
Yes.
talked about early Thursday games, and neither you nor I are a huge fan of Thursday games. The Thursday game, even streaming, doesn't bother me as much. And maybe I'm just being stupid about this. As 2 Monday night games. Sunday, you got games on top of games on top of games on top of games. So you're missing games all the time because that's the way the National Football League is run forever. That's what we've gotten used to.
Yeah.
But it bothers me a ton on Monday night that they got two
The
games going.
staggered game, the staggered start.
The staggered game is stupid. At least when ESPN did it for just they used to do it first Monday of the week.
They used to have two games back to back, though. Yeah.
Right. But they started, at 7, and the other one started at 10. So you had the first game almost all over before the second game was just getting underway. That is only an hour difference. So the two games are overlapping. I'm going to miss whatever hell other game is on. I don't even know what it is off the top of my head. When the Eagles are on at 7:15, I get it. ABC/Disney/ESPN wrote a massive check. They got one of the.
That's what it all comes down to. It's but they, I say it all the time, Jody. Everybody does all these sports business sites, sports business journal, and everybody else who competes with them. They always do these lists of most powerful people in sports, and I always chuckle because they have no freaking idea. The most powerful people in sports are the TV executive, the guys running these TV aspects of the sports, writing those checks. They are the most powerful people in sports, and it's not hyperbole. They are. They get what they want. And, Black Friday football, bang. You got Black Friday football. If the check's big enough, you get what you want. And that's the way it's always going to be. By the way, it was a productive, I'll leave it on this. It was a productive Thursday. You never like people to get hurt, but for the Eagles, obviously the Trayvon Diggs injury, that is huge impactfully on the Cowboys. And the Giants just stink. The Giants are a bad football team. I got to give our buddy Jeff Kerr credit, Mr. Stat himself. The 49ers had more yards after the catch than the Giants had in total offense last night. More yards after the catch than the Giants had in total offense.
No, I'm not here to sing the Giant praises, but the 49ers kind of do that to everybody. It isn't like, oh my God, Debo never gets yards after catch. He gets them all the time.
They do. But they had a lot more than they usually do. I mean, yards after catch.
More than usual, yes.
Yes,
I cannot deny that.
They get, you're right, on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, they get more yards after catch than just about
anybody in the National Football.
Yeah.
They got to be number one in the NFL.
Yeah. But 215 is what they had, and that's a big number. But if you don't have 215 yards of total offense in any NFL game,
right,
that's
the bigger issue. The Giants did diddly squat on offense. You take Saquon Barkley out of that offense, all of a sudden it grinds to a halt.
Yeah.
What happened to Danny Dimes being a running quarterback? What did he go for last night? 2 yards?
They made a bad decision. They overreacted. I always say the toughest thing in the NFL is to be honest with yourself. They overreacted, they overachieved, and they went down a bad road by signing him to a big deal. Now, you can get out of it. We've seen it here with Carson Wentz.
Yeah, they
didn't get out of it.
They didn't go as multiple years as Jalen Hurts, Burrow, Herbert, all those
But they set themselves back a year or two by doing that. I firmly believe that. And now they have to make the right decisions moving forward. And it's not easy.
Yeah.
Not easy.
We're getting way the hell ahead of ourselves, and we got a whole bunch of Eagle games to go, including one on Monday night. But that will be a great question come next April. Did the Giants draft a quarterback in the first round? I would.
I would.
I don't think Daniel Jones is going to be very good. This is going to be a good quarterback draft. Giants are probably going to be below 500, so they'll be in that top 10 range near. I know. We're sitting here in September, and we're debating next April what the hell's going to happen. But
depends on who you like and if you like the prospect. Like, look, if they're in a position to get Caleb Williams, everybody's taking him. So it always depends on, are you in a position to get Drake May, whomever, do you like that prospect? But yeah, they got to be open to avenues already about they made a mistake and they got to be honest with themselves. Will they be? I don't think so. That's why I think they set themselves back at least a couple of years.
Well, then you might have to skim back a little of your praise for Joe Shane because he's the one who decided to do it. They brought in a new general manager, and
it's better than Ryan Poles and Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah.
That's true. Compare him to being bigger than the smallest midget in the circus. That's what you want to hear if you're Joe Shane. All right, he's McMullen. I'm McDonald. You still are determining whether you will or won't be traveling come Monday or whatever. So you can't commit to being here with me on Monday, can you?
I cannot commit to it, but I plan on being here. Hopefully I'll either know or I'll be in Tampa. So if I'm in Tampa, I'll do it from the hotel room with crappy Wi-Fi, and we'll see if we can get it done. If not, I'll do it from here with good Wi-Fi, and we will get it done.
Be here on Monday to find out what Wi-Fi John McMullen's using here on Birds 365.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.